Hi, I'm Eunice.
And I'm Christine.
And in January, the two of us attended CMS Summer School. Christine, what even is CMS Summer School?
Yes, so CMS, or the Church Missionary Society, is an Australian organisation that is all about equipping and engaging churches for global mission. And so their summer school is the annual conference that focuses on deepening churches' hearts for Jesus and global mission through Bible talks and missionaries sharing their lives and experiences while on the mission field. And so for 2022, the theme was Walk His Way, which was about walking with Jesus through life's joys and suffering. Because of COVID, this normally in-person conference was done online, and so Eunice watched it online while video calling other friends, and I stayed in a house in Katoomba with 11 new friends and to watch it together. And so this year there were two separate talk series on Psalms and Philippians, and then there were also some missionary sessions where, missionary talked about their experiences. And what was really cool about the Psalms was that it was delivered by a guest speaker who is an Old Testament lecturer at Moore College, which it was just in mind-blowing depth of the Psalms. Yeah, so Eunice, would you like to share how the Psalms have changed your understanding of Jesus?
Yeah, well, yeah, as you said, we did go into so much depth that I've never really studied the Psalms in some like that depth before. And it was just interesting to see how the book it follows the plot through Israel's history from lament to praise and how it connects to Jesus, the perfect king.
Yeah, and I just never knew that the Psalms had like structure and how each of the five books in the Psalms corresponds to the first five books of the Bible, which is from Genesis to Deuteronomy.
Yeah. And yeah, I also learned that the Psalms don't only reveal the emotions that the psalmists felt, but also how Jesus felt when he was rejected by the people he came to save and as he died on the cross in our place. And I've come to understand that just like the psalmists, it's okay to lament and to grieve before God, and that just like Jesus did, it's okay to cry out when we feel far from God.
Yeah, and it's such a contrast from like our current culture that just really doesn't deal well with grief or suffering because it like we have a tendency of either wanting to like fix the problem that's causing the suffering or trying to decrease the pain that we see in other people by trying to make them feel happy again, and that the Psalms don't really do either of those things, but actually just really sits and validates and confirms these feelings of suffering and how wrong it feels and redirects our feelings to a God that we know is loving, even when it's really hard to see that.
Yeah, and that's actually reminded me of yeah, just the past year because my cousins they recently lost their dad, and yeah, it made me think about how it's better to be grieving with them rather than trying to fix or alleviate the pain. And just as the psalmist and Jesus recognized, I can still be thanking God even in those darkest times for who we know him to be, and that's faithful, loving and merciful, and that we can still be praising God for what we know he has done through Jesus and what we know he will do through Jesus's return.
Yeah, absolutely. And even though now we're at the point where we know what Jesus has done and the psalmist didn't like have that perspective, I just really liked how in these talks they emphasized how we can be still praying these psalms, and yeah, sometimes when the words don't we just don't have the words in the depths of despair, but yeah, that we can use the words that other people have used.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, we only didn't just look at the Psalms. We also had another talk series on Philippians, and we focused on the partnership between Paul and the Philippians. Christine, how have these talks changed your understanding of partnership and mission?
Yeah. See, like I had read Philippians before, and it's a great book. Um, but I hadn't kind of read it from how it was kind of intended at the time, which is, Paul's communication with the Philippians, yeah, as they partnered in the gospel, and how, yeah, Paul just really honestly shared his needs and struggles with the Philippians, and how, yeah, the Philippians had provided for his physical and relational needs while he shared the gospel abroad. And that, yeah, he really relied on them for, yeah, the physical provision of, things like food and shelter and things, and financially, but also in providing that emotional and relational refreshment. Because, yeah, the gospel is really offensive. And so it makes it can make it hard to always be kind of met with opposition, and to see how the Philippians supported Paul in that. And that also Paul, as basically by the eyes of the Jewish law as perfect and a top quality human by the standards of the time, see him listing his kind of spiritual resume and then saying that all of that is excrement, commit to knowing Jesus, was really challenging. Thinking about, do I think about the things that I have, like, I don't know, the things I have or the knowledge or skills that I have as like excrement compared to knowing Jesus and the surpassing worth of sharing in his death and resurrection, which was particularly, yeah, challenging when paired with the missionary sessions where the missionaries would talk about, often in tears, the suffering and the uncertainties that COVID brought that made their life really hard, like isolation during really strict lockdowns, especially for the single missionaries, or sickness, either their own sickness or their family sickness, either in their, yeah, field country or in Australia, and just having that privilege, I suppose, of being able to return to Australia whenever, having that taken away. And yeah, just how they, yeah, God has taken these ordinary people with a heart for him to send them into the mission field, often at a really high personal cost for, for them, for the gain of the kingdom. In particular, yeah, the parents on the field, like reflecting on the cost of the children who really didn't get a choice in choosing this life, and having the difficulties of learning a new language and culture and integrating into the schools. And yeah, especially thinking about Pedro and Joy's family, and yeah, other South American families. And then, yeah, thinking about how, yeah, I can kind of contribute to that picture by giving as much as I can to support the practical living needs of the missionaries, so that they can then use as much of their time and energy as possible into doing the actual mission work.
Yeah, I have similar reflections as well about considering what I can be doing right now to support or to contribute to the missions that are already abroad. And so things like giving and sending messages of encouragement that we heard from missionaries is actually quite powerful. And I've also come to appreciate the learning opportunities that we have here in Sydney, which we might not get in other countries. So things like being able to be part of the Evangelical Union at Sydney Uni and to be trained as an assistant small group leader, and also opportunities to learn second or even third languages. So like for me, I've decided to brush up on my Chinese skills by taking an elective for that. Yeah, so I've been challenged to consider what I'm doing in the current training field or mission field per se that God's placed me in today.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then like not just having this a once a year kind of thing and then going back to ordinary life, but having that accountability to the actions that I do now. So, for example, continuing to give to mission work financially and through prayer, and continuing to seek opportunities for myself to be trained and equipped in God's word, and then also continuing to pray for workers for the plentiful harvest field, but also knowing that when I pray that, I may well be praying for God to send me, and the challenge that that presents. And because I was staying with the 11 new friends during CMS Summer School and really experiencing a very tangible love and care for each other through food and fellowship, and also, yeah, sharpening each other in considering how we can all become better equipped and to take opportunities available to, yeah, take God's gospel elsewhere. Yeah, so Eunice, you and I have been really encouraged at CMS Summer School to walk God's way through the joy and suffering of life so that others can hear about the salvation that comes from Jesus' victory over sin and death. And so I guess our question to you is, what can you be doing today to contribute to God's heart for global mission?